Hey, I'm Dr. Ruth Roberts. We're here after small technical delays, and I am super excited because with me today is the lovely and talented Beth Hrnciar. And Beth, I've been saying your name like that because that's how it makes sense in Serbian. Is that actually right?
Close enough. It's Hrnciar. But if it's said in Connecticut, if it's said in the United States, it's Hrnciar. But Hrnciar actually sounds a little bit prettier.
Yeah.
I think I like Hrnciar better, but yeah.
Well, there you go. But anyway, so here we are finally after excruciating technical stuff. But the reason we're here is that Beth is one of our holistic pet health coaches. I think you've almost got as many initials after your name as I do now, which is amazing. But
they're adding up.
For those of cranking them up.
I would love to have DVM after my name, but I gave that up too early.
There's pluses and minuses to that. You can play in a whole different field and have a different experience, which is great. But for those of you that don't know Beth, she started her journey with animals over 20 years ago. But though her passion began in early childhood, she became a certified professional trainer to help shelter dogs with behavioral issues become more adoptable, and met her beloved pets Tucker and Aphrodite and started transforming her approach from conventional pet care to holistic methods, including fresh feeding. After building and running a comprehensive pet care facility for 12 years, she sold her share in 21 to focus on positive training and the connection between diet, limited medical interventions, and low-stress living. Her current family includes 2 American Bullies, who you affectionately call your science projects, multiple turtles and tortoises, guinea pig, fish, mice, all with their own special needs that brought them to you. So you're fostering when you can, and you work really closely with a local senior dog rescue. All of your experience has taught you a boatload of lessons, and I'm super excited to hear a little bit more about that. So welcome, Beth. Hope all is good.
Living life.
Living the dream,
Yep.
right? Yeah, cool. So one of the thing we're going to talk about today is kind of the hidden dangers of ticks and fleas, because we're starting to get into that season where there's more of them starting to pop out. The ticks are starting to move, they're starting to groove, they're starting to do their evil things. But there's a lot of things that I think many pet parents are not aware of in terms of these common flea and tick prevention. So what do you think are the biggest misconceptions about flea and tick prevention?
There's a lot. I live in Connecticut, so I hail from the state that named Lyme disease. So I'm pretty well versed in ticks. Luckily, where I am, I don't have a lot of ticks, but I also keep my yard really natural and try to do the best I can without it. And having bullies helps because you can just see a tick and take it off. But misconception wise, I mean, healthy pets don't get fleas and ticks. Although they're less likely to have problems with infestations, they still can get them. Natural solutions don't work because people are married to the chemical side of things. All natural pet products are safe, and they're not. And fleas and ticks are only a summer problem, that they just go away magically when the weather turns cold. And that's only if you live outside.
Right on.
Yeah.
Right on. So that's something interesting you said. I think everybody assumes if it's natural, it's all safe. But that's not the case. And there are plenty, like for cats, limonene can be really toxic. Yeah. And that's one of the things that gets used. So what are some, if you've got some other examples off the cuff, that would be amazing, just so folks can start thinking about that.
Well, I mean, all natural products, just because something says natural doesn't mean that it is. With the way the Food and Drug Administration allows people to label things, natural is kind of just a catchphrase. So if you're picking up a product that just says safe and natural, you really need to look at the ingredients to make sure you're not getting all of the extra stuff. I'm going to say this word wrong, like pyrethrins, I think it is. Am I saying it right?
Pyrethrins or permethrins. So there's two different ones. Yeah.
Are they both used in flea and tick products?
They are. So pyrethrins are supposed to be the naturally derived from chrysanthemum, and then permethrins were kind of the second generation chemical version of them.
Okay. Yeah, because I was reading about chrysanthemums last night, in fact, and that was what led me down that one. It's because I was trying to find a list of safe plants that you could have in your yard that are flea and tick kind of repellents, so to speak. But chrysanthemums being one of them, but not for your dog. They're not safe to be around your pets because if they eat them, the pyrethrins are in there, unfortunately. And I was like, okay, let me go down that rabbit hole. And then I found that those are what's used in the chemical versions that are so toxic to our animals. So there's a fine line between natural, I believe, and the chemical versions of things. And that I think people have to be very aware when they're using these products that a lot of these sprays may contain things that look good, but they're not. I use Nantucket spider spray, which I really like, and I found it to be as safe as it can be for my guys, and it's been really helpful when I go out into the woods, things like that, just to repel them. I've had it sprayed on my dogs and not on myself, and I have a cloud of things around me, and my dogs are fine. So I guess action achieved. So I think that's my main takeaway with that would be just really make sure that all the natural products all the things that you're using, especially with essential oils are fantastic and they do repel bugs, but a lot of dogs and cats, especially cats, you have to know what you're using essential oil wise. I am not an essential oil expert, but I know a couple of our coaches are. But they can they give you better an idea of how to dilute them properly, because even though they're safe diluted, they're not safe in their concentrated form. So be very careful before you just start throwing natural products at your animals. I think you have to be just as in a lot of ways just know what you're doing. It's even when you're using the chemicals versus the natural stuff, just don't jump into anything without reading the labels.
Right, because to us regular humans, natural has a specific meaning, but in terms of labeling, there actually is no meaning and no guidelines around it. So you can put, like, Kellogg's Corn Flakes is a natural source of corn and other B vitamins and junk they've added, right?
And they'll tell you about all the glyphosate and everything else that's in it as well. It's so
right. So that's it. I mean, manufacturers use these catchwords to kind of trick us into thinking, oh, this is cool. This is good. It's all happy good. And then what about Wondercide? Have you used that before? Do you know that product Marissa's asking about?
Wondercide and there's another one called Cedarside. I've used Wondercide myself. I had pretty good result, and I know other friends, and one of the other coaches actually has used it as well in her yard, and she actually lives in a really wooded, tick heavy area and has had a lot of success with it. So I would definitely recommend that. I don't know about their spot on products. I've heard good things about them, but I haven't personally used them. So the ones that I've personally used, Earth Animals makes a whole line of products. They have spot ons, they have food related ones that you have to start actually way before the season starts in order for them to work, which they're garlic based. They also there's some good flea collars out now, and not the white smelly ones that you get from like the grocery store. You have to go and actually get their herbal ones that are out now. They're good. I've had luck with amber collars. I know some people swear by them, some people don't, but I do like them. But again, like I said, I am not in a heavily ticky area. I rely on the answers from the people that I ask that live in the woods and things, and they've used natural products very successfully to keep away the ticks and the fleas and stuff. Not saying that you're not going to find a flea or a tick on your dog, but you're gonna catch them and get rid of them before they embed and cause problems.
Right on. So, and one other thing you mentioned too is that you prep your yard. So like you're doing stuff before the season hits. So and I'm kind of taking you a little off track, but talk about that a little bit, because I think people miss that concept all the time. And then they're like, holy crap, I've got a flea infestation.
Yep. The only flea infestation I ever had actually was I brought in sand for a backyard project, and it was filled with fleas. Other than that, which is crazy. You want to keep fleas like area now. So here's another problem, because you're going to run into two different schools of thought. People say leave your leaves because of the little bugs and stuff that live in there and winterize, but at the same time, the fleas love that. So I think working with your landscapers, or if you're doing it yourself for the weekend warrior, making sure your grass is taken care of and it doesn't get too long, because ticks love that. Keeping your bushes trimmed and making like things that bugs would like to hide in, basically getting rid of those, getting rid of water sources, because that's going to get rid of mosquitoes, things like that. Like standing water sources, not healthy places for them to drink, or if you have a fountain. My yard, mostly, I just stay on top of things and make sure there's no hidden areas in my yard that my dogs can kind of rustle around in the leaves, because that's when they come back with ticks. Keeping the hedges trimmed so they're not overgrown and crazy. Any place that ticks can hide and your dog will brush up against, or cat, and that's where the critters like to hide and jump in. And then I also spray with Wondercide or Cedarside when I can.
Have you ever used those nematodes to help? And you said the only time you've had fleas is when you brought sand in, but
sand. I don't have personal experience with the nematodes, but I do know people that have used them quite effectively. I've heard they're great. I think it's Arbico makes the nematodes, and they have that you can look up what your area is and what problems you have, and actually they've had great success with them, the people that I've talked to about them.
And when I lived in South Carolina, that was kind of part of our regimen. Was like in March, actually February, we're like, go treat your yard with nematodes now. Here's how to do it. And I think it really does help quite a bit. But
anything will eat the little buggers, right?
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing too, is that if we're like, oh crap, my dog has fleas, you're way too late in the process. Or, oh crap, my dog is infested with ticks. That's when you need to really start working on, months before is when you need to start working on the control part.
You have to work on prevention. That's the best way to protect your pets, I think, if you prevent things from happening, then you don't have to fix it. It's harder to fix a problem, especially like coming from the training world. It's way harder to fix a problem than it is to prevent it.
Well, we could say that's pretty much true about anything. In terms of pet health, right?
Yep, for sure. Diatomaceous earth, that's another one. That's what I used in the diatomaceous earth was really helpful getting rid of the sand. I had to kind of mix it all together. Dries those little suckers right out.
It does. It lacerates them and kills those buggers, which is a beautiful thing. And I think it's a great part of a multi-level strategy.
And then, like I said, in my yard, I also plant things that are going to scare the bugs away, basically. The ones I did find that I trust, that you can put in your yard, that if the cats and the dogs eat them, they're not going to die. Actually, I look mostly for dogs, so I can't. If cats, I would look them up just to make sure. But catnip itself, the plant, rosemary, mint, and wormwood are a couple of the ones that I found that are dog safe that you can plant within your yard. Ones you want to plant in the yard where your pets don't hang out would be chrysanthemums, lavender, citronella, and pennyroyal are the ones that are really good deterrents for fleas and ticks and bugs themselves. And citronella, of course. Don't want to forget that.
Right on. Yeah, and I think too the other thing is that the vast majority of these plants do have some level of toxicity, but they've got to eat a lot of them to actually get that toxicity. So just having them sort of around,
anything will make you sick, right?
Pretty much, yeah. So if they're just cruising around and brush up against them, not a big deal. Now, if you've got a golden retriever that just has a death wish and pica, and will eat everything that's not nailed down, maybe not such a good choice.
For sure.
But yeah, right on. So when we start thinking about, like, if we just mentioned, okay, if you plan preventively, then it's not a problem. If we go back to kind of grassroots, how do you think diet and overall general health play a role in flea and tick resistance? Because there are folks that are like, if they're unnatural rearing, they won't have fleas and ticks. And then we have people going, they have fleas and ticks. What do I do?
I think there's a lot. Strong immune system is your first line of defense against any of these guys. And it will help with internally and externally, obviously. Nutrition, you want to use a species appropriate diet. Clean diet helps strengthen a pet's immune system. I mean, there's no downside to strengthening your pet's immune system and keeping your dog healthy from the inside out. You want to use quality protein sources. You want to use omega-3s, fatty acids to support your skin health and natural oil production. You want to use fresh whole foods. Processed foods, in my experience, I don't promote them. I tell everybody that's the first thing I usually ask anybody I work with is, what do you feed your dog? And then we go from there. Sometimes it's, I feed the highest quality kibble. I'm like, you're still feeding kibble. I don't want to bash that, but so you also want to work on your gut immunity connection. That healthy gut microbiome supports your overall immunity. Avoiding processed foods again and artificial ingredients, things like that. Balanced digestive tract. We all know that, or I hope most of us know that your health starts within your gut. If your gut is out of whack, it's going to throw everything off. You want to also use natural deterrents in your diet. You can use certain foods, make them less tasty for the parasites. Garlic, in small amounts. Garlic will not kill your dog. I don't know if you want to embellish on that one.
That is the God's honest truth. That's why there's been garlic in the original crock pet diet for years. And in fact, an average 50-pound dog can eat an entire clove of raw garlic, especially if he's a golden retriever, with absolutely no issues whatsoever.
Yeah, get that a lot. Apple cider vinegar, you want to properly dilute it, is really good. Fresh herbs, parsley and mint in the diet will help. And vitamin B rich foods really help keep things healthy and moving along. You want to make sure they get regular exercise so their circulation is good and things keep moving around. Stress management is really important. Stressed out dogs are stressed out people, where none of us are well when we're stressed out. Adequate hydration really helps with the skin barrier. So to make sure that your things are moving. So overall prevention wise, I would say that those are key. You also want to, do regular groomings in this season coming up. Get a flea comb, spend some time brushing through your dog. If you have a dog that has, no fur, like my bullies, it's kind of easy. But if you have a dog, like you say you have a husky, those guys are the worst because the fleas burrow in and you can't find them. So it's really important to stay up on their maintenance and, not groom them once a year or whatever the case may be. It can be hard sometimes if you have a dog that doesn't like to be groomed, but that's when positive training comes in. And you start, desensitizing them to the horrors that they think a bath is and making it a good thing. And then again, the same thing, environmental considerations, especially inside. If you have a dog that has had fleas or you just came in from the outside and they lay down, you want to check their bedding. You want to make sure you vacuum regularly. You want to make sure you vacuum your couches, anything your dogs are going to be on or anything that you might come in contact with, because those critters get everywhere. I did find, though, there's a fun little trap thing that you can plug in that draws them in and they stick to it. It's I don't know if it has a name, but I was like, this is kind of cool.
It is. Those have been around literally since the 60s, and they are very cool because it's a little light that they're like, oh, this is cool and groovy, and then like a giant, heavy duty tape that they get stuck in and lodged in. It's
I would feel bad doing it to mice, but I kind of don't feel bad doing it to ticks and fleas. Don't make me itch.
Exactly. Right on. So that's pretty comprehensive. That's sort of the recipe for general good health as it is. And like you were starting to say, if we're making the immune system work well, then they're better able to kind of resist these guys. So when you take your dog to the vet, they're like, no, you have to give this thing, this Bravecto pill that's good for 3 months because, so what about all this conventional stuff? Are they, we're running between holy crud, I'm doing everything I can, like Victoria, but he still gets fleas, and then just somebody that always just goes for the Bravecto or the NexGard or those oral flea controls. So what's the difficulty and what's the potential harm with these medications?
I think there's a fine line between when you use them and when you don't. I guess you have to really look at your area too. I have friends that use them, but they use them. I've read recently that they're coming out with, it shouldn't be every 30 days. You can take it out to every 45 to 60 days. So if you have to use these products, you want to consider using less of them. And once it gets cold enough, stop using them. There's no need to put flea and tick if you're in the dead of winter in Connecticut, for instance. But if you live in Arizona, I don't know, are there fleas in Arizona? I know there's states that don't have fleas. Okay. So whatever states you live in that are cold, that are warm enough that all year round, if you have a flea problem like Florida, you probably need those kinds of things. But what the side effects of some of these chemical things are, I think it's really necessary that people know the risks of what you're putting on your pets before you go ahead and just do that and say, ooh, I don't want any fleas. First of all, they can develop immunities to these pesticides over time. I know like Frontline used to be a big thing, and now Frontline supposedly is not as big a thing. The pets and the fleas and ticks become immune to them. So they have to keep developing stronger and stronger products, which again, less healthier. And it creates a cycle of increasing toxicity. It's less effective in the long term, and topical products can remain on the skin for weeks. Kids, you're not supposed to touch it, and kids aren't supposed to touch it, but it's safe for your pets. That's what I don't understand. So you're not supposed to pet your dog, and they have that grease spot. Oral treatments circulate through the entire body, so it's not just going to one place and waiting there for the ticks and fleas to arrive. Products, like I said, can transfer to humans, and I believe it's UK has started banning a lot of them because their water system was being polluted by these
they had a huge PFAS contamination issue. Yeah.
So I mean, why wouldn't that be happening here? So there's so many reasons not to rely heavily on the chemicals that I would say, unless you absolutely need them, I wouldn't do it.
Right on. And I agreed. So the deal is that frontline, the active ingredient is fipronil, and the truly horrifying truth is that you have eaten more fipronil than you have ever applied to your dog.
Right.
Yuck. Every time you go to a salad bar. And the funny thing is that 20 years ago, the guy for Merck or Mariel or whoever owned it at the time, that was his line telling us how safe it was. And it was like, yuck. So
right.
that's good. And there is, and it's like, ooh, wait, I had to really, they usually tell you this after they've plied you with cocktails. So it's like, oh, okay. Oh, wait a minute.
Plus, I think as a species, humans tend to believe what they want to. So if you want to use this on your animal because you don't want to go through the steps of having to feed better diets and all that stuff, and some schmo tells you this is okay, you're like, well, he told me that, it's fine. It's on the internet. It must be true.
Must be true. I mean, yeah. So the other thing is that in the state of Massachusetts, they actually had to decontaminate their water supply with PFASs, and part of it, what they were doing was using that to control mosquitoes, but they were doing it at such a high density plus all the other sources. I mean, I don't know if they ever got it cleaned up. I think they got it down to acceptable levels, and that's kind of it.
Which is another topic.
It's just like, keep hearing Joe Jackson, everything gives you cancer. It's just every day.
It's a true statement.
Yeah. So, I mean, so this is the thing is that, Victoria's saying it, she's doing all this stuff and he still gets fleas. And so sometimes it just happens. So this fleas, I think, are not so much up your alley because, I mean, other than trucking in the sand, have you or your clients had a big flea issue?
So the one time I had the flea problem was my senior Tucker. He had been on a raw diet. I'd been doing all the right things at that point, and he lay down in a patch of grass, and they just got all over his chest. He must have laid down in like a hot zone, basically. And I didn't realize it until I was petting him one day, and I pulled my hand away, and there was blood, like the leftover, whatever they call it, the blood basically from the ticks. So I panicked because I'm like, he's bleeding. So then I realized, I gave him a bath, and I realized what it was, and so. I know age played a lot into it because he was way more sedentary at that point. I think he was maybe 14 or 15 when that happened. And he had always been a pretty active boy. But I mean, most of the dogs that go to the beaches, they have problems, but the owners tend to give them a lot more, just spend a lot more time being aware of it. If you're in a ticky area or a flea, like an area where fleas are going to be prone to it, it's really important that you go home and bring them home and do the maintenance just to make sure you get them out. The flea combs seem simple, but they just, you give a couple.
They work.
They work, and they pull them right out. And then, if you have an infestation, obviously just a flea comb isn't going to work. But I think when you're trying to do things holistically without using all the chemicals, then that is the top line of your defense is really management, in my opinion.
Agreed. And so, Victoria, you're dealing with fleas. So I'm going to go through kind of what we used to do in South Carolina, because down in Texas, that's going to be about the same kind of environment. And really, it's just awful. I mean, it's just terrible. So the deal is that you need to start now and treat the environment. So use the nematodes outside. use boric acid, silicate crystals, that kind of stuff inside. If you can find an insect growth regulator, yes, a chemical substance, I would use that spray in the house because it's going to prevent them from hatching out. And then do everything we've been talking about. You're already doing a lot. But what I would suggest doing is also having on hand some Capstar or Nianti-Piantum. And the interesting thing is that it can be given safely to get the fleas knocked off of your dog for a short period of time. I had a lady that did make, oh golly, poor pup, a little Shih Tzu kind of neurotoxic because she was giving him a full dose every day for weeks on end. But if you give it every other day to keep the fleas knocked off while you're getting things under control, it's been really awesome. And if you go to a dog park or a dog event where you know others are having problems with fleas, it's never a bad idea to kind of clean the decks, either by just simply bathing or flea comb with just dipping the flea in like a jar of alcohol, shaking it off because the alcohol will stun the fleas and kill them, and then shaking it off and then continuing to comb them out. So
I spray repellents too every time if I'm going out. I mean, if I lived in an area where it was a real concern, I would be spraying it all the time. They don't last forever. Obviously, you want to reapply them, but the times that I've had to use them when I've been in the woods, things like that, they've worked well. I've maybe gotten 1 or 2 fleas, but the repellents have been a real big part of keeping my dog safe from the fleas.
Cool. And I found a link for the Nantucket spider stuff and Wonderside, any of that stuff. So, if you're going to go do a dog event, use that beforehand. And you do really need to use that at least every 12 to 24 hours for fleas. So the other thing, diatomaceous earth, what's your experience been with that, with DE?
Love it. That's the few times I've had exposure to the 2 fleas and ticks. That's how I got them out of my house. I used it in the bedding. I used it on my couch. I used it on my rugs. And I just lightly sprinkled it everywhere, left it for like a half hour, came back and vacuumed it up. And that seemed to work wonders. Also, you can also do things like to keep them, because they'll come in through screens. If they're small enough, they can get in. They'll, hitchhike in on clothes, stuff like that. So cedar bedding deters them. Putting cedar mulch and stuff like that down, as long as your dogs aren't going to eat it. That's the one thing. The chocolate mulch and the cedar mulch is not the best for munching dogs, but it protects your home from around the outside. Regular vacuuming is huge because you got to vacuum those little suckers up. So I would do the diatomaceous earth and then wait about half hour and vacuum everything up really good. And then when I thought I'd vacuumed enough, I'd vacuum a little bit more when I thought I had fleas in the house. And then just to keep on top of it, I would vacuum once a week at the least to keep things going.
Yeah, and if you've got a lot of carpeting, Flea Busters product worked really well too. And you just
I've never heard of that.
It's they're pretty cool. So fleabusters.com, and I'll see if I can grab a link while we're talking. But it's a mixture of borax and silicate crystals, and a couple of other bits and pieces. And if you keep this in the vacuum cleaner, and if you've got a lot of carpeting, just sprinkle it out on the carpeting, rake it into the carpet, and then also put it like on the sofa behind the cushions or in between the sofa cushions, because the little flea eggs will roll off there. It'll help prevent them from hatching out. And I think, and Annette, I think diatomaceous earth, is a great environmental treatment, but not so good on or in the pet. I know there's a lot of people that are advocates of feeding it on a regular basis, but these are little hard organisms, dead organisms, diatoms, that are going to actually end up lacerating your dog's gut. So I don't like them, like it fed orally. Cool.
The life cycle too. People have to be aware that there's life cycles. So, just because you've killed off the adult fleas, you might have missed the babies, or the larvae. So you have to really make sure that you're constantly on top of it so you can kill them as they come through. A lot of people don't understand. They think that just because they're not seeing the adults that they're in the clear, and they're not. So just be cautious of that if you're in a heavily tick or flea area. We have more ticks up here than fleas where I'm in Connecticut. So.
Yeah, and that's it. So and there you are. So I mean, somebody asked the question earlier. Let me see if I can find it. That, what's worse, your dog getting Lyme disease or the tick medication?
I'd say the medication. I do know dogs that have had Lyme disease and have had some serious complications from it. But it's like, I don't know, the risks to prevent something that may or may not ever happen versus knowing that you're poisoning your dog. I don't know. In my opinion, I'd rather the risk, especially living in Connecticut.
It's a tough call. And the thing that's interesting is that there is a lot of vets that, your dog tests positive. Well, even though your dog has had the Lyme vaccine, we're still going to test for it because it may not prevent. So I think overall, tick control is the best way to go, and being really aggressive about it. So, the only way to even the pesticide versions are not going to be fully 100% protective either. So it's kind of a tough one.
I also heard that there's a big percentage of us that are probably running around with Lyme disease and don't know it because our body has, fought it off. Or is keeping it under control. So that's a little scary, thinking that we all probably have it. I mean, I've never personally had it, and I know people that have had it themselves, like they had the big bullseye and all that. But again, living where I live, you're exposed to it all the time. So do we treat something that we're exposed to that we're not showing symptoms for? I don't think we should, but.
And that's the thing. I mean, so Lyme is one of those deals, like back in the 80s when it first started coming out, it was not new, but pretty novel to the immune system. And over, so the 80s, that's 50 years now. That's 4 dog generations. And so their genetics have started to learn how to deal with it a little bit better. Mm-hmm. And for sure, there is always going to be dogs and people that get really sick and get chronic Lyme disease. But I think if you are aware of it, you've had a known tick exposure, or you've developed the symptoms of Lyme, that's when you be your best advocate and your dog's best advocate to get them tested and get them treated appropriately. That I think that even in the Southeast now, they're starting to treat more aggressively because it's ubiquitous now, almost entirely across the U.S.
And there's all these tick-borne things popping up too, viruses. So Mother Nature's always going to find a way to outsmart us. So it becomes a battle of how badly do we want to poison ourselves and our environment to offset these things, I guess.
And that's it. I mean, it's like you have to decide what the risk and benefit is of every choice that you make. And that can get really overwhelming. But I think it's getting crystal clear that all of this chemical soup that we've created is creating a lot of the chronic disease that we and our pets are experiencing. So
I put together like a checklist that I'm happy to send anybody if they want to reach out to me of just things you can do starting like from the day that it begins, not the day, but when you see the weather starting to change, like the other day I had a tick crawling on my head. I was like, oh, it started. So, you kind of know when they're coming out as the weather starts to change. So I did put together like a little ebook for people if they want to, if they're interested, I can send it to them. They can kind of go through it and see what they're doing if they're missing something. Sometimes there's that one little element that you haven't included, and that little element is the thing that takes it over to the side and helps you win the battle for this year.
Right on. Right on. So I've got your Facebook link. Is there another place that's better for them to reach out to you?
Follow my lead, bb@gmail.com is the best email right now.
All right. That one's playing well.
Yeah. God, when they're ever, I was trying to get my follow my lead pets one to work, but for some reason it's not working. So I can't give that
Challenges.
one out.
Challenges.
Yep. I'm not all that computer savvy. I'm much better in person. hands-on stuff.
Right on.
Didn't grow up in that era.
Right on. So we just do what we can. So the deal is that there is no straight answers, Hunter, and the deal is that you have to use a multitude of different approaches to accomplish the goal, which is to keep heavy infestations off of your dog. And
The
if
good
I
thing
could
is, though,
type,
when you're doing all this, you're also affecting other things. So, having a healthy immune system isn't just going to help with fleas and ticks. It's going to help across the board. It's going to help fight cancer. It's going to help fight any kind of immune assault. So you're not fighting a losing battle, or this isn't going to take up all your time for only one thing. This is kind of a lifestyle approach as opposed to just spraying something on.
right. And that concept of take this pill and everything is fixed is kind of what's gotten us into this mess as it is. So that's why there's no straight answer. It's a process, and it is indeed a lifestyle. So right on. Yeah, so I think we've gotten through a lot of good information here. And there's a boatload of, Beth's got that checklist for you, which I think will help tremendously. There's some blogs on my website if you need help. In general, we started carrying the one of the other, we had used amber collars, which I think are great, but they do tend to break. And so a lot of people were like, I don't know about that. There are a myriad of different tags that help.
Those have worked. So, I forgot about those. The little sonic ones. I've had really good feedback with those.
Right. So this is the one made in Spain, and they actually do have papers showing it repels ticks and fleas. Now, the deal is that you can't just put them on and take them off, because what we're doing is using this tag and actually the amber collars and any of these types of things to change the electromagnetic field on your dog so that it repels the fleas and ticks. So putting it on right before you go outside is not going to cut it. You need to have this on them constantly. But these tags work for at least 3 to 5 years, which is a big benefit too. So even with the chemical collars, they take at least 1 to 2 weeks to kind of ramp up to work. So
now I've heard, sorry to interrupt you, the Seresto collar. I don't know if that's good or bad at this point.
So the deal is, and I used to use those in practice because they worked really well. And so for my clients that lived in South Carolina in the winter and then went back to the Northeast in the summer, they were like, oh my God, this is amazing. Well, the problem with Seresto is that it contains PFASs. And so this is one of those deals. So it's kind of like you got to figure out how to assess your risks and decide if that risk is worth it or not. So if I was in an area where if I was traveling with my dog that was naive to ticks and going to a heavily infested area, that's something I might consider. I might consider some of the topicals, but before that, that's it. I would do all of the preventive things. And little Hio is old and a little bit frail, but she's getting there. So far we've been able to dodge ticks in all over Europe because the difficulty here is leishmaniasis, which is endemic in this area, and that is not fun. And there's that.
Yeah, we're starting to see a little more Ehrlichia popping up too. And then people are starting to panic over heartworm and mosquitoes which was never a problem up here, but now the southern dogs are being brought up here to be adopted and stuff, and they're bringing with them heartworm. So now that's becoming an issue. But then same thing. Do you do the heartworm preventatives and try to be safe and poison your dog up front? Or do you wait and get that heartworm diagnosis because you test once a year and treat then? So it kind of goes hand in hand with the tick thing.
It does. And that's the thing too. Like in the Southeast, there's plenty of people that did really well with no-sodes, things like HWF from Amber Naturals. And then I saw lots of clients that their dogs got heartworm on top of it while using those things. So I think that's a whole nother conversation too.
Sure is.
But that's where you don't have to use as much as what it says on the box. Let's just put it that way.
Mhm.
And so I think that's helpful. Cool. What else are we forgetting?
I don't know. I took all these notes, but I think we covered most of it.
We're bouncing around like crazy. Right on.
Let me look at my notes and see what we're missing. I know that there's a lot of stuff out there on essential oils, because when I was just researching to be able to do this live, so much stuff comes up with essential oils, and they're fantastic. But I really want people to understand that you can't just start putting essential oils on your pets. It is dangerous. So you definitely want to make sure they're diluted properly. And like I said, I am not an EO specialist, but there are coaches that we have that actually they're aromatherapists, certified aromatherapists, who can definitely help make sure that you're using the right products, and also make sure that you're looking at your individual. I mean, look at your dog's age, look at your dog's health conditions. If you have a dog that has cancer, then their immune system is going to be way more compromised than the same dog that doesn't have cancer. So you really need to meet your dog as an individual before you make your decisions on how you're going to treat any condition, whether it's flea and tick problems or any of these things. The dog's an individual. You can't there's no one answer to everyone's problem, I don't think. And I think that's what's gotten us in trouble, that they're like, oh, well, you do have an answer. We can just put this stuff on your dog once a month and you don't have to worry about fleas and ticks. And it's just, life isn't that simple, unfortunately.
No, and you're absolutely right. And what was okay and worked okay for a dog at 2 may not be the right solution at 12. So I think that's the other thing to consider. But yeah, like Audrey's on here with us. She is a certified aromatherapist. Yay, Audrey. Yeah. So and will those I think I'm not sure if they will interfere with EMF blocking tags.
That's a good question.
That's a good. I'm not sure about that, but we need to find that one out, because that's the thing. I mean, we're besieged by all sorts of stuff. Yeah, so just crazy stuff. So yeah, and there's a recipe on my website. Yeah, ACV with the water. Yeah, you can.
Yes, it's 1-to-1, I believe. That.
Yeah.
For
that's
that,
a great one.
There's a spray. If you reach out to me, I can give you the spray. I have it somewhere. The list of the 1-to-1 ratio. Like, you make a spray for your clothing or for your pet's bedding, stuff like that, with apple cider vinegar. So that way, and I believe they said it was 1-to-1. It's in my notes.
Right on. Somewhere in there.
I can't remember everything.
Right on. Yeah. So this has been lots of fun. We've got a bunch of folks on here with us, so I think this is a super hot topic.
I hope it was helpful. I know we didn't give like definitive answers, but it really isn't. There isn't one. You really have to approach everything like you're individuals. I think Rita Hogan also has a lot of stuff on. She has a whole flea and tick protocol thing that she did. So that might be they're canine herbalist, and in her new book, I believe she has stuff too that which should be helpful for people for a different approach.
There's a myriad of options out there. And the deal is that if the thing that you've chosen isn't working, you're not married to it. Go find the next thing that's going to work a little better.
For sure. It's important to be pivotal. You try something. If it doesn't work, give it your best shot and move on.
Next step.
There's something out there that will work.
Right on. Cool. Well, Beth, thank you so much for spending time today. Really appreciate it. This has been a ball. And we will see everybody next week. Yeah, cool. Ciao.
Take care.